bookshelf tour. So these books are in my living room at home. There's a little shelf below the TV stand. So that is where these stay. These really do not have any rhyme or reason to why they're here. They're just sort of miscellaneous books that didn't necessarily fit anywhere else, with the bookshelves that are more themed in nature. So we've got a few Hajin books. We've got Sherlock Holmes collected stories, which I still need to read. Several nonfiction books, some Aravinda Adiga books. What else? Solzhenitsyn, Gentleman in Moscow, and a few other things. So above here, I have put a sort of representation of what the books in my office at work are like. I mostly have my collection of African American lit books in my office, and I have a few other random things, like I have a small collection of LGBT themed books and several plays and things like that. So this is a sort of just representation of books that I have here right now, but that are also somewhat representative of my office. So you've got Susanna Morris and Brittany Cooper's Crunk Feminist Collection. Susanna was actually on my dissertation committee. Zadie Smith's White Teeth, which I need to read. Nella Larson's Passing. James Baldwin's Notes of a Native Son. Kazuo Ishiguro, is that how you say his name? The Remains of the Day. Tony K. Bambara's Gorilla My Love, which I just read recently. Toni Morrison's Sula, which my students just read recently. Some plays by Eugene O'Neill, and Tolstoy's The Death of Ivan Ilyich, which I still need to read. Now here we have a little pile of books that I'm actually using for an article that I'm working on about Harriet Mullen's poetry. So this is her collection, Recyclopedia, which is actually a compendium of 3 previous collections: Trimmings, Supermarket, and Muse and Drudge. Okay, so we've now moved on to the bookcase in my bedroom. So this generally has books that are personally important to me somehow, or have some kind of special significance to me. So the top row is my collection of Rashi commentary on the Torah. So that's in 5 books. So Genesis, which in Hebrew is Bereshit, Exodus, Shemot, Leviticus, Vayikra, Numbers, Bamidbar, and Deuteronomy or Devarim. I also have my old copies. I say old because these editions are from like 1975, of the Union for Reform Judaism New Union Prayer Book for weekdays and Shabbat, and the New Union Prayer Book for the High Holy Days. Then I also have my copy of Abraham Joshua Heschel's The Sabbath, and then a few other Jewish related books like the Tanakh. Then I have some books that have been important to me in my past, and that I really liked: The Count of Monte Cristo, Cyrano de Bergerac in English translation in the original French, and Thomas Hardy's Test of the D'Urbervilles. I was obsessed with these books for a really long time. They were my favorites. I've also got my Russians up here. I really like me some Russian classics. So Tolstoy's The Cossacks and Other Stories, Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, which is wonderful, Chekhov's stories, and Anna Karenina. Then I've got some John Keats poetry. Love Keats, was super obsessed with him. Used to want to be a Romanticist before I decided to be an Americanist. Augustine Burroughs' book, This Is How, which is one of my favorite books of all times. In fact, I quote it so much that my friend Ahuva, who's a rabbi, kids me and says that when I quote it, she's like, right, so as the Bible says. Oh, and then my copy of Angels in America. Love Tony Kushner. All right, so second shelf. Yeah, I'm not going to go through all of these individually, but here's just the sweep. of what's on the second shelf. Oh yes, I do have my 2 Meryl Streep biographies at the end. Meryl Streep, our greatest living actress. And then down in the bottom row, I have, I have to get down here. All right, I have my Daniel Silva books. So those are about 8 books in the series. And he publishes one every year, so he's kept on publishing them, even though I stopped buying around like book 10. And then a few older books from the days where I studied French more intently. I actually was almost a double major in French and English in undergrad, but then I decided in my last year of undergrad I was going to take a year of Russian instead. And so anyway, but I did take several courses in French literature, so I still have some actual books written in French from those days, including Flaubert's Madame Bovary, Marguerite Duras, and some other ones. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this room. On to my home office. Okay, so this is one of the 2 bookcases in my home office. And my home office and work office is where I keep all the themed books. So this entire bookcase is Jewish and Jewish American themed. It mainly has Jewish American books, but it also has some just sort of general Jewish books. Like there's a copy of Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers. There is a copy of Night. There are the complete stories of Franz Kafka. There are some Holocaust-related fiction and nonfiction, etc., etc. Down here we have Michael. Do you say his name Chabon, or I'm not sure how you actually pronounce his last name. I'm gonna go with Chabon. Could be Chabon though. Anyway, so that guy. And Nathan Englander, who I particularly like, and I pretty much wait for whatever the next thing he's going to write to come out. I think he's a better short story writer than a novelist, so if you've never read him and you're interested in stories about Orthodox and contemporary Jews, but from a perspective of someone who is sympathetic and not just dismissive, I would highly recommend his collections For the Relief of Unbearable Urges and What We Talk About When We Talk About Anne Frank. So yeah, it's got my Cynthia Ozick and Malamud. Those are both in my dissertation. Philip Roth, Anzia Zirska, also in my dissertation. Mouse, very good. Yeah, and then down here we have, most of the ones down here were on my reading list for my comprehensive exams. So yes. And then over here, last but not least, we have my other themed bookshelf, which is the pragmatism and poetry themed shelf. So my third area that I specialized in graduate school was American pragmatism, which is, okay, this is like a gross oversimplification. So my dissertation director, if she ever sees this, please forgive me. But in its simplest form, pragmatism as a philosophy basically says that we should think about the practical consequences of our beliefs and actions, and we should make sure that our actions and beliefs are aligned. So if we think one thing but then do something that's not in line with the belief that we had, that's not good and we should fix that. And I find pragmatism endlessly insightful and fascinating, and it's really the only theoretical perspective that makes sense to me, which is why that was the theory I was most drawn to. So we have some proto-pragmatism, Jonathan Edwards. We have William James, who is probably the most famous, the most famous American originator of pragmatism. He didn't actually originate it. That was Charles Sanders Peirce. But William James was pretty famous in psychology. So I've got his Varieties of Religious Experience, his book called Pragmatism, his collected writings from 1902 to 1910. My parents bought me for my birthday one year his 2-volume set on psychology. These are the oldest books that I own and probably the most valuable. We've got Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was also a proto-pragmatist figure, very influential on the pragmatists. John Dewey, James Baldwin. Louis Menand's book, The Metaphysical Club, really good, interesting explanation of 4 major pragmatist figures. So he covers Charles Sanders Peirce, William James, John Dewey, and Oliver Wendell Holmes. So yes, also got Cornel West and a couple other things on there. Then down here we have some pragmatist writing and also some stuff from my graduate seminars in poetry. So you've got Ralph Ellison's The Invisible Man, collected poetry of Robert Frost and Wallace Stevens. Here's all my poetry. So, this is really interesting. So, Anne Carson's Knox. This book is, okay, so you see how thick this is, right? It's really thick. Looks like a doorstop. So, you open it. It looks like this. And this is how it reads. The whole thing folds out like an accordion. And the idea is that she originally kept all of this in a notebook form. And when she went to publish it, she wanted the reader to have the same or as close to the same experience as she had working on it in notebook form. So that's why it's not bound like a traditional book would be bound, and it has all these different different types of media in it that look like they have actual handwriting on it, and then they have little like pieces that look typewritten, and then there are photos and pieces of letters and things like that, and that's why it's all sort of bound accordion style like this. So really cool, right? All right, that's Anne Carson's Knox. One second while I put this back. Okay, then we also have, let's see, Louise Gluck, who I really like, or Glick, I'm not sure how you pronounce her name. Some more Harriet Mullen, Adrienne Rich, W.S. Merwin, Theodore Retke, Charles Wright, Jean Valentine, Ann Winters. And then down here I've just got some random assorted textbooks. And that is the bookshelf tour of my home. I hope you've enjoyed it.